Tyra's tyranny is almost over, and like before, it's no longer completely out of the ordinary to see a team without the Huntress of the Realm in it. And you no longer have to stick a piece of blue tech on your screen where the Tyra pick is on that loadout screen so that you can pick her before everyone else can, as not so many people are trying to get her to level 4 to get into ranked, and people are generally getting used to her and have played her now. It was pretty crazy as like a frenzy in the first few days that she was out, and it seems to have gotten a little bit normal now. Definitely in casual games you'll see more Tyra picks, but in a lot of the competitive games I've played since, I haven't seen one, or if one has been picked, everyone's moaned on the team, and it's been a bit out of the ordinary. Perhaps people are finally realising the character comes with a few drawbacks. And with this video, I want to cover whether Tyra is actually good or not, if she's OP, underpowered, and where she exactly fits in with the meta at the moment. So I failed to my road to Masters with 6-1 wins to losses. I was at Diamond and about 4,300 MMR, but finally got defeated by Skillganon from Team Viral and Strutzel, who I don't know who he's playing for at the moment, but they dragged me out of the running. And generally that's sort of quirks of the ridiculous champion rating system at the moment. The fact that I could get so high, I was like 4th in the leaderboards with just 6-1 wins to losses is quite ridiculous. But that's just how it is. And actually if you look at the leaderboards now, there's a lot of players that I don't recognise and aren't from the esports scene, or at least that I don't know of. And it's quite interesting that that's true, because it sort of suggests that a lot of better players aren't playing her in ranked and aren't doing well with her at least. So maybe that's a bit of an indicator as we go forwards. Anyway, basically I've got quite a lot of games playing with her and getting her to ranked and then playing those ranked games as well, so got quite a bit of experience with her so far. So then let's break Tyra down, how she works and how actually she works in game. So in theory, Tyra is meant to be a walking glass cannon, and when I say walking, I mean she has no escape to speak of, and every other champion in the game has some form of escape ability, and the developers have stated that they wanted to make this basically a pure damage character with Tyra and have some variation, which I think is cool. I think that's an interesting way to go. But at the same time, it's a massive impediment to Tyra. Basically, it means that she can't escape out of sticky situations, but also she can't chase down enemies that are low very easily. And it's one of the biggest problems at the moment and makes her extremely vulnerable to flankers. But let's get on to the damage and how all of her abilities try and make up for that. Her left click or auto rifle is quite close to Victor's with less sustain over range due to the cone of fire requiring bursts at range, and ideally you maneuvering very close to enemies. And the big issue with Tyra's left click compared to Victor's is that cone of fire or the bloom of the shots, and unless you are right in somebody's face you will not be hitting all of your shots. And with Victor and all hitscan characters, headshots pay off massively as there is no drop off to the headshots bonus damage. So with aiming down sights, Victor can pretty regularly hit headshots even at some distance, getting that extra bonus damage. But Tyra's rifle also doesn't have a regular recoil pattern. It will kick up and left, straight up and right, which too compounds the issue of really using her well at range or having a great controlled fire in general, at least at the full automatic speed. For me, this is one of the reasons Tyra has a lower skill ceiling. It's fine for players with lower skill in gun control who would auto fire no matter what and will still do okay because of the people they're matched against and that the people they're playing probably don't react to them or will let them get into flanking positions. For better players, you can single click or burst as the first few shots have almost no recoil, whereas the shots towards the end of the burst are more erratic. And single fire bursting or clicking is quite difficult whilst moving and dodging, especially as you don't have any real inbuilt bullet dodge. But to be honest, unless you're right in somebody's face, like up to their head, then you probably will be wanting to do this tap firing or bursting instead of doing full auto firing, as you won't miss your shots this way. And that extra damage could be the difference between you taking somebody out and you dying. Her right click, the noob tube, gives burst damage that sort of mirrors Cassie's blast shot, meaning that she also has the power to inflict burst on a single target effectively. It can also give her extra damage whilst reloading or if your clip runs out. And the noob tube also has limited splash, so it can spread damage on compact groups, but it isn't a big area. And the new tube as a projectile actually is one of the highest skill ceiling abilities about Tyra and will separate the good and the bad, as although it has that projectile drop, it has no range fall off of the damage and is a heavy hitting 700 damage with a direct hit, meaning that if you are skilled enough to get those shots off, and especially if you are very good with it and you can do it at longer range, it can be very useful and give you that extra range damage potential. The problem is though that with the default 9-second cooldown, you can get 3 magazine fulls of fire without getting that extra burst or that grenade in between those shots. Her Q Firebomb is the ability that is hailed as the tank destroyer, and to an extent this is true. It basically does 9% of maximum health every 0.6 seconds for 6 seconds, and what this equates to is about 90% of someone's entire health pool if they are stood in it the whole time. Tanks are especially hit as with their bigger health pools, each tick means more health lost, and it melts their elongated lifespans like butter if they don't get out. It also reduces healing by 50%, meaning healers will have a hard time keeping anyone alive inside its radius. Its radius too is pretty much the size of a siege capture point, so will mean tanks on the point will have to vacate for 6 seconds not to get completely destroyed. This is a big deal as scattering teams and getting tanks to leave a point is often the decider between a successful round and a point lost. The problem with this is its huge cooldown of 18 seconds, which with cards can go down to 16, but means you're without the ability for 12 or 10 seconds, and to use it effectively you need to be able to throw it without being harassed by enemies, which is another big thing as Tyra is shut down a lot of the time if you're against a flanker. One of the things that does make it usable is that it's such a long range and you can basically toss it from the other side of the map, and it's another one of these skill shots where you're having to get the projectile to land in the right place. And this ability is, in my opinion, what puts Tyra in the meta currently, as if an enemy picks 2 tanks in competitive or a deathball comp, Tyra with some babysitting can shut down the composition by making the point a no-go zone at important moments, but also it basically scatters enemies so that they can be picked off individually. And then going on to that, picking off individuals, her Q, the Hunter's Mark, puts a mark on the enemy for 6 seconds, revealing them and granting you a 15% damage buff. This on the one hand increases their single target burst damage, which is definitely useful as it's basically a level 3 aggression without having to purchase something that is ridiculously expensive, but the real power of this is the mark. If you mark squishier or more mobile targets, it will allow your flanker and damage dealers to track them down and catch them out, especially if they are low health or are reloading. This is especially useful in pre-mades calling out a target that needs to die but has run away. Tracker is a card that also gives Tyra some escape in that it increases her movement speed by up to 20% maximum whilst the mark is active. And it still isn't as big as a lot of the other escape abilities and needs you to face an enemy to select them before using it, but movement is what Tyra sorely lacks. To be honest, it gives Tyra ability to dodge and chase down targets more than it does to escape. And this is one of the big things that Tyra actually lacks. Although she can mark wounded enemies, it's difficult to chase them down if they use their movement abilities to get away, as you have little to chase them with. And even with this 20% extra movement, it's still hard to chase somebody down that's rolled or use an ability to escape, as it's still taking them further away than you can move. Finally, her ultimate increases fire speed and movement speed by 40%, and you don't have to reload. This gives you a hell of a lot of sustained damage. The problem for me is that 40% movement speed still isn't enough to make you bullet dodge that effectively, and although you can melt targets down, unless you catch targets without their dodges on cooldown, you'll struggle to keep on them. Also, you are still squishy and vulnerable whilst you're using it, so you either need to use it when enemies' attention is elsewhere surprising them, or if you're behind a tank's shield and you can do the damage with no retaliation, or in combination with the Eevee's ultimate or Pip's bad juju, for example, where it's basically giving crowd control on a lot of enemies, or maybe even Grumpy Bomb from Bomb King. You can regain the ultimate pretty quickly as you put out so much sustained fire, so using it at the start of rounds or just after losing a point can be good to get it back in time for the next push. But overall, it can be countered by killing you, and you aren't all that safe when using it, and even though you're putting out consistent fire, you aren't doing huge single shot bursts like Androxus, so enemies can still duel you, and with 2 people focusing on you, it's game over. I've seen so many Tyras shut down in the middle of it and experienced it myself. But overall, it can be countered by killing you, and you aren't all that safe when using it, and even though you are putting out consistent fire, you aren't doing huge single shot bursts like Androxus, so enemies can still duel you, and with 2 people focusing on you, it is game over. I've seen so many Tyras shut down in the middle of it and experienced it myself. Item-wise, Nimble is always a great pickup to give you that extra movement, escape, and chase down that you don't innately have. I'm very tempted to say it's a first pick, and Life Leech can work with so much sustained damage, and like Victor, you're good at spreading Cauterize against a lot of enemies as you fire automatically, but Wrecker can also destroy shields as you do sustain fire. In general, Haven and Blast Shields are so powerful at the moment that I think it goes without saying that they're one of the first pickups, and especially because you're so squishy and immobile, it's quite a big deal to have some defense. So with all of Tyra's working parts out of the way, how does she fit currently into the meta? Well, against 2 tanks or a death ball lineup, she is definitely a solid choice as the Molotov has so much point deny that it is unreal. But that's only if she is being babysit, or that the team is able to divert and create opportunities for her. With zero escape, Tyra is basically flank fodder, especially Eevee, who can just use their movement to completely outplay a Tyra. In all honesty, an Eevee pick is pretty much game over for Tyra as it's such a hard counter, and I think it actually highlights in the game how powerful movement is and how movement is so important. I think movement on every character was such a big thing in the game, and part of the reason why I really like Paladins, because there's so much of this movement skill added to the firing, which is, I guess, arena shooter-like. In casual and lower level play, Tyra is definitely going to be quite strong like Victor is. Given breathing room and free roam, Tyra can be an unstoppable force, but more organised play and where people are tryharding, she falls a little short unless babysit or picked against a death ball lineup. All in all, I think Tyra is not overpowered, and people might not agree with that, but she basically may even be a little underpowered as she sits at the moment. In all honesty, I don't like the randomness of the left click. I also don't think an automatic rifle really fits a Huntress. I wish it was more like Cassie's crossbow, a semi-automatic rifle, but that had fall off. It might be more interesting and less frustrating to use. And people are already sort of doing that by tap firing their guns and doing little bursts, so maybe it just shows that the cone of fire isn't working, or it's not very good. It doesn't have good feedback. Anyway, what does everyone else think? Do you agree with this, or do you think Tyra is actually overpowered? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below, and any opinions you have of the new champion. If you liked the video, be sure to hit that like button. If you thought it was rubbish, give it a dislike. Subscribe for more of my content, and thank you all very much for watching, and happy holidays everybody, and especially if it's Christmas in your time. I don't know whether it's actually some of the time zones Christmas is now, but if it is, happy Christmas. Anyway, see you in the next video. Joshino.